My name is Lukasz Brzeski.
An odd matchup coming up this weekend. A couple of heavyweights who aren't so heavy, with one making his UFC debut. We have Dana White's Contender Series contract winner, the U.S. Virgin Islands' own Karl Williams, and he's going to be taking on the Bull. And it's not John McDessie up a bunch of weight classes. It's Lukasz Breski, a very difficult name for us to pronounce here in North America. He had a really weird fight on Dana White's Contender Series. Was there a tap? Was there not a tap? He got a contract. Then he got that overturned to a no contest. You saw the complications. And a weird fight against Martin Budaj in Breski's UFC debut, where most people thought that he won, even though he didn't. So for Breski, it's the big reset. For Karl Williams, a big opportunity. And Williams coming on to Dana White's Contender Series, we talked about him a lot. Karl Williams, who's 6-1, and Jimmy Lawson, who's 4-1. This one at heavyweight. Now, originally, this was supposed to be a completely different matchup, and we weren't actually supposed to have Karl Williams in. Now, if you went over to his Instagram, I think it was on September the 4th, he posted that, I got a chance in the UFC. So he did weigh in at 233 pounds for this matchup. So you look at it that way, Lawson weighed in at 263, both polar opposite fighters. And if you do focus in on it, the original matchup that Lawson was supposed to have was against not Kevin Stefanski of your Cleveland Browns, it was Kevin Zaflarski, like a backup QB version of Kevin Stefanski. I know Karl Williams is coming in on short notice. He's out of the U.S. Virgin Islands. He goes to American Top Team Atlanta. He started out his athletic career in track and field, and then he kind of wanted to move into martial arts, so that's kind of what got him to the dance, wrestling, and then into MMA. I watched Karl Williams fight, Matt, and if he had like 2 more fights, I think he could have made it into the UFC as a light heavyweight, and I don't know why the PFL decided to pass on him from PFL Challenger Series, because Williams is an incredibly diverse striker, and by that, I mean, he throws somewhat basic combinations, but he has speed, he has power, his wrestling translates into MMA.
It definitely
he has
does.
Great control on the mat. Like, I really like the skill set I see out of Karl Williams, and I'm not making a pick on this one, but if Karl Williams won this fight, and listen, I don't even know, there weren't odds on this one earlier on today when I looked. Kind of surprised to see it here, and I think either winner, Williams is probably the more UFC ready, Lawson maybe
Probably the higher ceiling, I would say.
So Williams goes out there, 6 of his 8 pro fights at light heavyweight. He missed weight 1 time, but 6 of 8 at light heavyweight, 2 at heavyweight, and he takes on Jimmy Lawson, a premier wrestler from Penn State. Williams goes 3 of 3 on takedown attempts with 10 minutes and 54 seconds of control time and wins a decision, and it surprised a lot of people. Now, if you watch tape on Lawson, you knew his takedown defense was porous and he could get held down off his back. But a really impressive win for Karl Williams there. I'm just still surprised and kind of scratching my head that he doesn't go back down to 205 for this one.
It is kind of surprising. I guess you could say that for both guys, but not really. I mean, Breski is so big for the... Well, he would be so big for 205 is what I mean to say, but it is interesting. We have seen a current trend of smaller heavyweights really excelling in the division. I mean, we've talked about this a lot of newer guys coming in. They're kind of in that 220 to 240 range, less so in that 265, really pushing the scales. But you are right. Williams had a lot of success at 205, but he is fast for the division. That's something that has to be said. And we talked about this a lot when John Jones moved up to the heavyweight division. It was, hey, how is he going to transfer? How is he going to look? And I guess we don't have that much film to go off of. That fight was so quick. But for Williams, I do feel like he has a bit of an athletic advantage over a lot of the guys he does face in the division, because the one thing I really do like about his takedowns is the entries. They're so quick. He goes from being at that long range to the close range in a bat of an eye. So it will be really interesting to see how Lukasz does do at the range, because I'll be interested to see. Lukasz has a big advantage with not only the power, but the technique on the feet too, but it's going to be difficult for him to have confidence in his own strikes if Williams, every single time he sees strikes coming his way, just ducks underneath and starts going for some of those takedowns.
And Lukasz is such an interesting guy. For Breski, won on Contender Series last year. It's overturned to a no contest due to the presence of clomiphene in a drug test. He won that fight over Dylan Potter, who came in on short notice, and it was a fun fight. We all enjoyed it. But did Dylan Potter tap? Well, Mark Smith thought so. I didn't. My eyes didn't.
If Mark Smith was there, though.
Mark Smith saw the tap. I mean, Alistair Overeem felt the tap.
Okay, you were at home watching. Mark Smith was in the cage.
I saw every angle. He didn't tap.
Mark Smith was there. If he saw a tap, how can you disagree with it?
I disagree with it. For Lukasz Breski, a guy out of Poland, he's trained at so many different gyms, so many different great fighters. He obviously referenced Jan Blachowicz quite a bit when he was coming into the UFC. Obviously, sketchy circumstances over A, controversial tap, but B, the no contest and the 9-month suspension after the fact. But when I break these two guys down stylistically, Matt, I can talk out of both sides of my mouth for both guys here earning victories inside of the octagon, and that doesn't happen every day. I love this fight booking. I think it's just, I think it's fair, and I think the fans are really going to like this one.
I'm really excited for Lukasz at the UFC level because, again, looking at his fights prior to this, there are some very nice skills that he can build upon once he does get to this level. I brought up a lot, we were talking before the camera started rolling. I love his ability to finish opponents up against the cage, not even just to finish them. I just like the scenarios he goes through, because how many fighters do we see? They get their opponent in a good position and they go buck wild. They don't really worry about their technique. They just get very overzealous with their style of fighting. We see this all the time. Then you look at someone like in last weekend's co-main event, for instance. Jeff Neal got Vicente Luque hurt, did not get wild at all. And Jeff Neal's someone who we've talked about a lot on this channel for just how intelligent he is with his finishing patterns. Look at how he did to Luque. Hurt him, hit him with 47 uppercuts.
Took the second round off and then just absolutely went motorboat in the third round.
He was Bangkok ready, that's for damn sure, in that third round. But what I like out of Lukasz is, when he gets guys up against the cage, he's not just a headhunter. He's not someone who's going to throw a lot of left and right hooks hoping for the finish. Go to the body, he will use his kicks effectively in this manner. For Lukasz, he does have submission wins, but they're not necessarily like, oh, he's Damian Maia. You know, I look at them a little bit more as like, maybe not even Karl Robertson. That's not a good example either.
Even when he was taking on Potter, the commentary was like, well, he's off to the side. He's not even on the back. It was like an AJ Dobson submission. He's on the side going for a rear naked. You think, well, that's not going to work at this level.
And you're probably going to agree with me on this. One of the first things I noticed with Lukasz, he's got to be so strong. Like, if you're fighting him, you have to be worried about every punch he throws, and you have to be worried about if he is able to dig underhooks. And I think underhooks, overhooks, not to sound like Dominic Cruz, one half of this weekend's main event, I think those will be very important in this fight.
So, in the matchup for Breski taking on Dylan Potter, he gets the win. It's controversial. Dana White, after the fact, said, I'm on the fence with Lucas. Say what you want. He didn't tap. He wasn't getting out of that choke, so they ended up signing him regardless. He did get a win on the regional scene over Ednaldo Oliveira, who was in the UFC, fought Gabriel Gonzaga and lost to him. He had 2 fights he lost, and since then he's fought some guys. But for Breski, the level of competition, not really the greatest. He was also a minus 445 favorite over Potter. But what I did like out of Breski that I was able to see on the regional scene and in the fight against Potter, he starts every fight off by throwing 15 to 20 hard leg kicks. Closing the distance, throwing chopping calf kicks, and you like to see that. Softens up his opponent, and then he can get into his boxing. And Lukasz Breski, his boxing's really weird. It's not super technical. He does kind of like to throw his left hand out straight to just kind of like wing his right hand. There's a lot of power on it. He doesn't have good takedown defense, Breski, at all. Like that fight against Michal Kita, that's a guy that's fought a really good level of competition over on the Polish scenes. Doesn't matter the organization. He's fought a lot of guys that you know, that you love. You've seen Kita on some of those records. In that fight, Kita was able to really just ground out Breski.
He was.
Take him down, hold him up against the rage. And you might go, Craig, what's a rage? Have I heard of that before? Well, M1 Global used to have it. And Babylon also had it.
Can I be honest? It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
So if you've never heard of it before, picture this. If you're 6 feet tall, 5'11", 6'2", whatever, you can figure this out. If we're talking like my calf down, well, that's a chain link fence.
I would just say, look at a boxing ring. Up until the first rope, it is cage.
It's cage. It's like a baseball field. It's whatever you want to think. It's chain link. Above that, it's a ring. You can get a little creative, but not really. Do you train with it? Probably not, unless you're in some like underground whisper network in Europe. But I did look at that as Lukasz has great kicks, closes distance well, backs guys up, then he can work his striking attack, and he will go body, head. He will mix it up that way, and that's what I like out of Lukasz Breski, the bull. So in the fight that he had in his UFC debut, taking on the biggest heavyweight you're going to fight, Marcin Budaj, and in that one, MMA decisions. 1 scored at 30-27, Dvalishvili. 11 scored at 29-28 for Dvalishvili. 1 scored at 29-28 for Budaj. Budaj wins the fight by unanimous decision. Dvalishvili outshot Budaj 118 to 66 on
Yeah, great
significant
output,
strike
yeah.
attempts. So really weird that the fans go that way. The overwhelming strike numbers go Zdravski's side. But when Budaj hits, he covers. You talk about covering distance. He's always in your face. Tough guy to fight. And he's had some really weird decisions, especially that technical decision fight against the Huggy Bear. That's Josh Copeland. But either way, a really, really tough fight against what's his name? Chris Barnett in that debut for Budaj. So if you do consider it, Zdravski came in on Dana White's Contender Series 2021, an episode with Jazz Davicius, Jack Delange Lusa, Albert Duraev, and Jalton Almeida. So kind of interesting there. 50-50 striking always out of Zdravski. And again, did he tap, didn't he tap? So Zdravski in this one, Karl Williams, an interesting clash of styles, so to speak, in the matchup. The slight favorite is Williams, but he opened plus 145. Now he's minus 170. Zdravski opened minus 170. He's plus 145.
I was surprised to see Williams open as the underdog because, again, 99% of the time, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but when a guy with a wrestling advantage fights somebody who overcommits a little bit on their striking, but again, is a good striker, what happens? The wrestler ducks underneath the strikers, gets a takedown, and is able to accomplish it. So I was a little surprised just odds-wise seeing him open as the underdog.
And Zdravski now out of this one, he fought out of Spartacus team at one point. He's fought out of some different gyms. He's a Polish man training out of Ankos MMA. And you see Marcin Tybor out of that gym. You've seen a lot of big-name guys cross-train out of Ankos MMA. So great to see out of Zdravski. We show it on and we throw it on over to Topology. Have a look at the votes over there. Surprise to us there, to you. I'm going to say over under on this one. Favorite probably shaded over under 67.5% Williams here.
I think it'll be over, actually.
Think it's going to be over? Oh, it's the opposite.
Wow.
631 total votes, 71% Zdravski, 52% by decision, 40% by knockout. For the 29% that have Williams, 62% by decision.
Wow.
A surprise on the votes. The fans had the underdog, but the odds have switched, and yeah, that comes as a surprise to Fight Night Picks.
So I guess I'm going with the fan underdog, but the betting favorite in Karl Williams. Like you had said, I'm a little surprised to see him fight at the heavyweight division in the UFC, because a lot of the times what we see is a fighter will fight at their heaviest division on the regional scene. Then when they come to the UFC, oftentimes they'll go from like lightweight to featherweight, welterweight to lightweight. So it is a little bit surprising seeing Williams fight at this division, and I do think he will face some physicality issues, especially if he does stay around in the future. But I do favor him with the wrestling in the matchup, and I think his defensive striking will be good enough to at least let him get into the wrestling exchanges.
I know Zdravski's last time out, he was able to keep that output, keep that pace as the fight went on. You don't see that out of a lot of heavyweights, so I commend him on that. I love to see it. Who's got a style that's more conducive to some wild fights? It's actually Zdravski if you watch him fight. Zdravski's one of those guys. You like the Trevor Peak punches? He'll end a combination and hit you with the inside of his fist and not like the end or where his knuckles are. So for Zdravski, you got to watch out for that. The straight shots up the middle could cause an issue for Williams. I like Williams wrestling, not just the Williams or the Jimmy Lawson fight that we had seen, but you look at it for Zdravski, and I mentioned it in the breakdown, his fight against Michael Nikita, he struggled against the takedowns, a guy that you just saw fight for KSW, and Nikita's fought everybody on the regional scene. But for Williams, I can see him going out there, sticking to the game plan. He's also a decent striker. We've seen that as well. So both of us in the matchup going with the UFC newcomer, both guys looking to pick up their first UFC wins. We're going with Williams. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. Was Zdravski the real winner against Budaj? I think he was, but we really want to hear from you down below in that comment section. Some big-time fights on this card, including Volkov taking on Romanov in this division. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.